So I've owned the DJI RS3 Pro for a while now, and honestly it's such a good gimbal. It can pretty much hold anything you throw at it. It's got that auto locking mechanism thing, which is absolutely amazing for weddings when you just want to pick up a gimbal, quickly use it and put it back down again. And honestly, it's just been an absolute workhorse for me. But sometimes with the cameras I use, so the small mirrorless cameras like the A7S3, the A7 IV, with some smaller lenses, I do think that the RS3 Pro is just a little bit overkill. So when the RS3 Mini was announced, this is the thing that kind of was going through my head, and I just thought that this could actually be quite a good gimbal for my use cases. And now I've used it for a little bit, and long story short, I do think this is a really capable gimbal for its size, and it does serve a purpose for a lot of people, as long as you know the compromises you're making. So why are they doing this now? Well, I think before this they had the RS3 Pro and the RS3, and these are both pretty similar gimbals, but again, the RS3 Pro can throw whatever you throw at it. That's just my cat. So the RS3 Pro can pretty much handle whatever you throw at it, and the RS3 is just a good middle ground. But they never really had one of this size, and this gimbal actually comes closest to one of my favourite gimbals of all time, and that's the Weebill S, just because it's so small and so powerful at the same time. And if you just add the little briefcase handle to this, it becomes pretty similar, to be honest, to a gimbal of that size. But what is the catch? Let's find out. I just had to interrupt this video to say that you are not subscribed. And if you like videos on tech for creatives, then hit that subscribe button. Down below, there'll be lots more content coming soon. Okay, so starting off with the design then, this is pretty much getting the same design language as the rest of the RS3 line. It looks pretty similar, just obviously a lot smaller, and there are some key differences. We've obviously got the screen on the back still, and you can control all of your settings through that, and it's honestly just as good as the screens on the other two gimbals. On the left side, you've got this sort of mounting point for your briefcase arm or your monitor or whatever you want to put on there. On the RS3 Mini, there's only one of these, whereas on the other two gimbals, you get one of these on either side. So if you did want to mount a briefcase handle to this side and a monitor handle to the other side, you're not going to be able to do that in the same way as you can with the other two gimbals. Obviously, that's just to simplify and keep the weight of this gimbal down. One of the key selling points is that it's actually a really light gimbal, so you can hold this all day and not really get as much fatigue as, for example, holding the RS3 Pro, which is a beast and can sometimes hurt the arms if you're holding it for a full wedding day. But talking about simplifying, and this is where I'm actually quite gutted, to be honest, is that they've actually gotten rid of one of the features I really love about the RS3 and the RS3 Pro, and that is the auto locking feature. So when you turn the gimbal off, there's no auto locking, it just floats. And that is a massive shame. I did ask them about this, and they said it was to keep the weight on the lower side, but also to give users a reason to upgrade to the RS3 and RS3 Pro, which I kind of understand. This is the entry-level gimbal, and one of the reasons people are buying it is because they want something lightweight. If you pack it with too much features, you're then compromising the reason this gimbal was made in the first place. But part of me thinks that when other gimbal companies start implementing the auto-locking design, this sort of auto-locking might trickle down to the RS4 Mini, for example. So what can it do? It can actually balance some really good and useful setups for mirrorless shooters like myself. So on here now at the moment, I've got the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 on a Sony a7S III, and it's perfectly balanced with the release plate that was included. And just like that, it's nicely balanced. It can apparently handle the original Sony 24-70 2.8 GM, which is heavier than the Sigma 24-70, and obviously it can handle the new GM as well. Potato Jet, on one of his videos, I can see the 35-150 on here, which is an absolute beast of a lens. I'm not sure how well that stabilizes on this gimbal, but it's obviously not designed for huge lenses like that. It's designed for more smaller mirrorless setups like this. But the fact that it can handle these 24-70 setups is pretty much one of the heaviest lenses you're going to use when you're running a gimbal, in my opinion. The The motors on this gimbal do feel strong. It's not like other smaller gimbals where sometimes you can feel it sort of struggling, and you can move the motors around a bit and you can feel that they're sort of moving more than they probably should. These actually genuinely feel really strong. There's a notable, when you're sort of carrying it around, a notable strength, and it's not, the camera is not sort of bouncing a little bit or struggling at all. And that's great for a gimbal of this size with a setup this heavy, to be honest. Now, a lot of the footage you're seeing is shot with the Fuji X100V, which is definitely a smaller camera, so really not a problem for a gimbal like this. But this particular camera doesn't have inbuilt image stabilization, so it's just no stabilization at all in this camera, so the gimbal is doing all the work. So it's probably a good example for you to see just how smooth it is and where it's kind of not so smooth, but again, it can handle heavier setups. The Bluetooth recording is also a really nice feature, so you can set it up to wirelessly connect to your camera, and then every time you want to record, you can just hit this button on the gimbal rather than actually going up and touching your camera. This is a feature I've used quite a lot at weddings on the RS3 Pro, and it makes a lot more difference than you think it would. So the next feature I wanted to talk about is portrait mode, and unlike the RS3 and the RS3 Pro, this RS3 Mini actually has a hardware portrait mode solution. So I'm just going to get into that now and quickly show you how that's done. So if I remove this plate from here, using that button, there we go. And if you watch a previous video of mine on the best gimbal for vertical video, you'll notice that I said that hardware solutions are better for vertical video, because with software solutions you often end up with the gimbal pointing upwards and having to hold the gimbal at a strange angle like that. But a solution where you can just sort of change the mounting plates orientation, just like so, just makes it then a lot easier to go from horizontal to vertical. Now it is a bit fiddly and you do end up with an extra piece which you're going to lose, but after a couple of times of attempting it, I managed to get it pretty quick. So on a shoot I could probably do it pretty quick. Probably not as quick as something like the Moser Aircross 3, for example, but I do rate this vertical shooting mode, and again it's quite easy to balance when you're shooting vertical as well. So what can't it do? And the main complaint that I have with this gimbal is the fact that the arms are a lot shorter. Now obviously this is designed to be a smaller gimbal, so the arms are going to be shorter. And it's not really a problem if you're using the quick release plate that comes with it with the gimbal, because again you can balance all of these heavy setups. But the moment you want to attach, for example, this Manfrotto RC2 quick release plate, which I use for all of my gear, then the setup with the camera comes a bit too top heavy, and you actually can't then balance the gimbal properly. And I appreciate this can probably be solved with some counterweights or something, for example, but I want my gimbal to work straight out the box. I don't want to add anything to it to make it work. And as soon as you start adding quick release plates to this, it just raises that camera that little bit too high, so on the tilt axis it just won't stabilize properly. Now this is causing me all kind of problems, because I really wanted to integrate this gimbal into my wedding setup, where I use these RC2 plates on monopods and tripods and gimbals and everything that I need to connect my camera to. But I'm just not going to be able to do that, because as soon as I put this plate on, even a regular camera with a 50mm is not going to balance. So once it's all taken apart, you end up with just the gimbal itself and then these three small parts which make up the camera mount. And this is the way that you're supposed to travel with this gimbal. And that leads me to one of the major problems of this gimbal, is I don't think that it's very good for travel. I don't think that it folds down small enough. And the fact that you're sort of encouraged to take all of these small bits apart means that every time you want to put this in your bag with the small bits in it, then you've got to take it out of your bag, reassemble the gimbal, rebalance the gimbal, and then you can get going. And then to put it back in your bag, you then have to take it all apart again. And you get the gist. But the actual size of this thing is so awkward that it actually doesn't really fit in any compartment of any bag. It doesn't fit in the small compartments of the Peter McKinnon bag. It doesn't fit in the side of a Peak Design bag. I ended up squeezing it into the side of a Peak Design bag just because I needed to get it in there. But it took up so much room and I had to take these little bits off. So that every time I took the gimbal out of the bag, I then had to rebalance things. And that was a bit of a pain. And so I don't think that this gimbal is necessarily great for traveling because of the way you have to take everything off just to store it nicely in a bag. And again, it is quite small. The battery handle you can't actually take off. That would make a huge difference to this. So I think, you know, the parts I'm not too worried about. I guess once I've taken the gimbal out of my bag and balanced it and everything, I can just keep it out of the bag. But if they just made the handle removable, that would make a huge difference for travel, in my opinion. Overall, I can't even believe they've managed to squeeze such a powerful gimbal into such a small size. Like, this is so light even compared to the setup that it's going to be holding. Like, the main bulk of the weight is coming from this. It's like 2-3 times the weight of this. So really, really impressive from DJI. I can't wait to see what they come up with next. That's been it from me. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, and you're probably not subscribed yet, so hit the subscribe button for more videos on tech for creatives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.